Well, hello and welcome to the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint live series. My name is Guy Stevens. I'm the founder and executive director of the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint. We are here today. It is Thursday, September 4th, and we are here today with a special episode of our podcast. And as you may know, we usually do these bi-weekly, but every once in a while we have something special we want to share with you and decide to come back for a special episode. And today is one such occasion. I'm really excited. We're going to be sharing with you in a minute about a brand new book that's coming out called Your FBA is a Fantasy. And I've got the authors of the book, Rick and Doris Bowman, with me. And we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. But before we get there, a couple of announcements. If this is your first time here, welcome. If it's not your first time here, welcome still. Glad to have you back. The Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint is a small nonprofit that was started really around it started around restraint and seclusion, but we do a lot of things around the use of punitive and exclusionary discipline, trying to reduce those practices, trying to better support kids. And of course, we do that in a way that aligns with our core 5 principles of being trauma-informed, neuroscience aligned, neurodiversity affirming, relationship-driven, and collaborative. We do a lot of work in education and support and trying to make a positive difference. So we are glad to have you here with us today. I do want to share with you a brief announcement before we get to our guests that are here with us today. And that is just share something else kind of exciting with you. So if you bear with me, I'm going to actually bring up on my screen here something exciting I want to share. And that is, many of you may be aware, but we have a learning management platform. And we have put our previous conferences up on that platform. You can go see Beyond Behaviorism or Supporting All Brains. We also have been doing book studies on the platform as well. We've been doing 6 or 8 a year, educator book studies, and we're developing some new courses. And we have a brand new course that is just out now called Applying Universal Design to Create Inclusive Classroom Spaces. And this is a course that was created and developed by Courtney Hart, who is a volunteer here at the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint, and somebody that's done some really amazing work, has presented at our conferences as well. The course is available. I highly recommend it. It's about an hour and a half, and that's available on our learning management platform. So I'd invite you to go check that out. So that is my main announcement for the day until we now get to why we're really here, which is to meet our special guests. So I'm going to bring our guests up on the screen here with me, and I'll tell you a little bit about them, and then we'll get started on a conversation about their brand new book. I've got Rick and Doris Bowman with me, who kind of are known as Team Bowman, and they bring decades of combined experience, kind of mental health, trauma-informed spaces, education, supporting schools and various agencies. They really specialize in trauma-informed resilience building, neuro-affirming practices, helping professionals that are facing difficult situations. Really bring a lot of powerful lived experience and lifelong learning and extensive professional expertise into spaces, and have been doing work in collaborative problem solving, for many years, and worked really alongside a lot of educators and therapists and others, administrators, doing some really amazing work. I've had the opportunity to be at conferences with them, to hear them speak and present on a number of topics. And they are regular presenters at the Attachment Trauma Network conference, which of course we also attend on a regular basis. And they offer training and support kind of nationwide. In addition to that, I feel like I've gotten to know you two a little bit better. So, I always like to say, friends and colleagues, right? People that are in this space doing work to make a positive difference. And having had the opportunity to chat with you both and join you, sit at a table around a conference, knowing that you're people that are doing this work, really from the heart, really doing work, based on your own, personal experiences, both in schools and as kids and the whole journey here. So I really appreciate you both and the work that you're doing. So we are here today to talk about your new book. So I just want to start out with the welcome you both, and thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you so much. We're
Absolutely.
glad.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to see you. And I want to pause for a moment, and as we're getting started here, remind you, if you're watching live, and I see a number of eyeballs already here watching live, if you're watching live, regardless of what platform you're on, feel free to let us know in the comments, who you are and where you're from. It's always a lot of fun. And, it's also fun sometimes to see familiar names I know that we have a number of shared friends and colleagues that we work with, but it's always fun. So if you're watching live, let us know in the chat who you are and where you're from. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. And I want to start by really kind of hitting on why we're here. So we're here today because you have a brand new book, and book almost seems like a not enough, because this is about a labor of love, right? So we were talking earlier, and you said you've been working on this for I think you said 9 years, but you've been presenting on this topic of your FBA as a fantasy around the country.
Oh. When you open our door real quick. Guy, I'm sorry, you on our end you look frozen. Oh, there we go, Courtney. Hi. I can't hear you actually.
Yep, I was muted. Sorry about that.
Okay.
The guy's frozen, but do you guys want to tell us a little bit about the book while we wait?
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe just start with sharing about how the book came about.
All right, there we go. I'm seeing something.
He's back.
All right. Okay. All right. It looks like we had what we call in the internet business a hiccup of some kind,
Okay.
but we're back, and sorry about that. But we're here, of course, to talk about your book. And this book has been something you've been working on for quite a while, and of course everything that goes behind it. But the book is Your FBA is a Fantasy, a guidebook to creating truly trauma-informed, neuro-affirming functional behavioral assessments and behavior support plans. So this is a book that is actually getting ready. In fact, I believe you said it is available right now for pre-order on the Kindle version, but
Yes.
the actual the actual book itself will be available next week for pre-order as well. And I know that you are rushing to get everything done to get that ready. But I'm really excited to learn more. Of course, having the privilege of being connected with you, I also had the privilege of getting a early copy of this book, and getting a chance to kind of offer some, kind of a comment as well. So I've had a chance to dive into this pretty deeply, but I'm excited today to share it with our audience. So you ready to talk about the book?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. So you both probably know that I think one of the things that we share is probably not being a big fan of a lot of the traditional FBAs that are done. So I wonder, before we get into the book deeply, if you'll just talk a little bit at a high level about what an FBA is for somebody that might be out there and not be aware of what it is, and to whatever extent you want to go into it, what the problem is with a lot of the common approaches being taken to FBAs. So if we can give that as a little background to get people kind of into the topic, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So a traditional functional behavior assessment typically looks like an analysis of the antecedent behavior, ABC, chain, where we're looking at a behavior that a child shows as a function of them wanting to typically get or avoid something. Most schools are looking at getting or avoiding. Some are incorporating, maybe the child's communicating something with their behavior. Maybe there's a sensory need, but most of the focus has been on the idea that they were trying to get something or trying to avoid something, and that we needed to figure out what that was and then give them sufficient motivation to do that in a way that was more desirable in the school setting. And in that process, really the entire focus is on the behavior. It's on the behavior, and then this belief that we can manipulate the consequence, whether it be a positive consequence like a reward, or a aversive consequence like a punishment, or some sort of contingency to then extinguish that behavior, or are we trying to increase a particular behavior, right? But it's all about the idea that it's all motivational, and that, if the kid really wanted to, we just got to motivate them to try harder.
Right.
So most plans have been built around that. And then you asked, like, what are some of the pitfalls of that? Is that basically?
Yeah. So I mean, as you're explaining, this is something we've talked about quite a bit, but what's the problem with that? What's the problem? To me, I mean, at this point, having spent a lot of time, kind of in this space, it's like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
glaringly obvious to me, right? What would
Yes.
come with, but
Yes.
for people that may not be familiar with the process, I mean,
Yeah.
what's the problem with that kind of idea that, well, this behavior is just a matter of motivation, and we just need to offer a
Mhm.
reward, and then everything is going to be great? What's the problem with the current approach to doing FBAs that's so common?
Well, first of all, I mean, I would love to see everyone in front of me and be able to raise your hand when I say, do any of y'all ever want to get or avoid something in your day? Right? And typically we have 100% of hands up in the room. We all get and avoid things. There's always a function to our behavior if you want to look at it at that level. But in reality, if you think about a child in a classroom that is struggling with behavior, and there's that layer at the top of like, oh, they want to avoid this work, or they want to get some, the teacher's attention or something like that. There's also 29 other kids in the class who also want to get something that day and want to avoid something, and they don't throw a chair or cuss the teacher out or run out of the room. So we know it can't be that simple. And so what we recognize now, and what all of the research shows us, neuroscience research, trauma research, brain research, shows us that, in fact, it's a lack of skill. It's a lack of self-regulation a lot of times that, if we can sum it up, it's that if that child really had the ability to do better, they'd be doing better. So they didn't wake up this morning, roll out of bed and go, I want to go wreck my teacher's day. I want to do terrible today. I want to be a failure. I want to disappoint my parents. I want to be socially rejected. So we attribute intentionality to it. We attribute that they need to be more motivated, when in fact they're lacking the ability, the capacity to meet the expectations that they're facing. And then as a result, what we see is what we call behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, and I mean, it just gets to the point that there's so much more beneath behavior than motivation and intent, right?
Mhm.
And that's the problem. That if you think that all behavior is about intent, then what do? You think that you have a motivation issue, and you offer a reward, you offer a consequence. And there, it's such an oversimplification of human behavior.
Yeah.
Just to think, well, if we only had the right carrot hanging in front of the child, then it would be able, child would be able to do what we want the child to be able to do. I always find that so disturbing that we oversimplify to that extreme. And we're not thinking about all the other things that make up human behavior. I mean, I've been talking a lot about kind of the idea, and Stuart Shanker, kind of famously said this: behavior is biology. There's so much more to human behavior. There's trauma, there's lived experience, there's there's neurotransmitters, there's all these things that happen, and it's such an oversimplification. Yeah.
Well, can I just share with you how this
you can
book
share
came to be?
this is your time. You can share with me anytime, anything you
Well,
want.
I want to give you the 2-minute version because I think that it speaks to like the larger importance of this.
Yep.
And what we're talking about is incredibly important, but there's even like this other layer. And
Sure.
When this evolved initially, I was running a self-contained program in a school district, and it was middle school students. So I was receiving the files of students who have had the traditional plans.
Right.
And when the first plan didn't work, you know what happened, right? They wrote another plan that looked essentially the same as the first one. It just had different rewards or something in it. And then when that plan didn't work, we had another plan. It was all based in the same mindset, framework, belief. Right. And so the important thing is to stop and think about that. I tell people, like, if you want to do a regular plan the first time around, try it. If it works, you're on easy street. But if it doesn't, please don't write another plan that just looks exactly like that one with different fill in the blanks, because that child needs something different. And what I saw is that when you have kids that end up subject to plan after plan after plan, right? This plan failed. This plan failed. This plan failed. No, they are not thinking the plan failed. They're not going, wow, the school's behavior plan really failed me. They are thinking, I am horrible. Right. I'm broken. I'm a loser. And all these adults are trying to help me do better. So I must be too messed up to fix.
Right.
And the important message that I really want people to hear and like carry at the center of the dashboard is we are talking about identity.
Mm.
We're shaping identities by imposing plans that don't actually meet the need that's there. And then when it fails, the kid takes it on as like, I'm messed up,
Right.
I'm broken. And ultimately their identity becomes, I'm one of those kids.
Right. Of course.
It's
Of
not
course.
worth working with, not worth fixing. Why would I keep trying? Then the adults are frustrated, like, he won't even try it. Like, yeah, we kind of programmed him that way, you know? And so I think identity for me is like one of the core concepts that sometimes falls away, and we don't recognize how impactful. It's not just in that moment that the child experiences trauma again, that their nervous system is activated, all the things that happen. It's this longevity of telling them who they are by the plans that we're using when we're using the wrong plans.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting. You know, I think about, you know, what you were saying there a minute ago. And, you know, I was presenting at a conference recently, and, you know, one of the themes that I talk about a lot, and it relates exactly back to this work that you do, is kids who are misunderstood in the name of their behavior. And they're misunderstood because we don't dig deeply enough to really understand the behavior or the why, the deeper why beneath it. And I pose that same question, like, who here has known a child that has been misunderstood in the name of behavior? Who here has had a child that has had an FBA written for? Who here had an FBA that worked? And I mean, there's almost no hands.
No hands.
That's right. That's right. And you know, what's interesting, of course, is that you know, part of the focus here is about, you know, kind of this idea of trauma informed and neuro-affirming functional behavioral assessments. And I would say to you, and I don't think you're going to disagree with me at all here, but it's my belief that a lot of these FBAs that are really kind of steeped in very traditional approaches and really anchored by, you know, motivation and rewards and consequences, not only are not trauma informed practices, they can actually lead to trauma. You know, because when a child feels like, as you said, internalizing this, that they're failing, you know, we're often taking very vulnerable kids that have often experienced a lot of trauma, and we're further traumatizing them in the name of help, but further traumatizing them, which I think is why this work is so very critical in terms of what you're doing. I want to pause for a second just to give a shout out. I saw Pam has joined us from Canada, from the beautiful west coast of Canada. I also saw a friend and one of our longtime friends and volunteer, Karen in Oregon, as I recall, if I'm not mistaken here, said hello and has had a couple of comments here. Half my work is helping kids heal from the internal belief about themselves. Others, if you're watching live, you know, feel free to let us know in the chat who you are and where you're from. And also, as we're having this conversation, if you have a comment or a question, feel free to put that in the chat as well. So I think we would, you know, I mean, we're in like-minded space here. I'm sure we would all agree about the need for this, recognizing that what is being done by and large in many schools regarding functional behavior assessments is not only not working, it's leading to outcomes that lead to more trauma, less success. And that's frustrating not only to the children, but to the educators and the, you know, the teacher assistants and others in the families. So the need for change here is really significant. So Rick, I'm going to turn it to you for a second and just ask you, you know, kind of in this journey, you know, you've got a long history of work in this, you know, in this space. You know, what were some of the early things? When did you begin to realize, you know, as an educator, as a human being, that what we were doing was not working? And can you share with us kind of some of that journey for you in terms of like realizing like, hey, this isn't working. We've got to do something different, because we get stuck. We get stuck doing the same thing and expecting different results, even when it's not working. So just tell me a little bit about your personal journey, if you would, in that space.
Well, first of all, I was one of those kids.
Right.
So when I was in school, I came from a very dysfunctional family, a father who had PTSD from World War II, a mother who was schizophrenic, and they could not meet my developmental needs. And I go to school, and I had the experience of just being shut down most of the time. I was living out of my trauma as a young boy, and then as a young adult. And as time went on, I started working in the field of clinical psychology as a therapist. I moved into public school administration. And what I saw in that was that I saw those kids. I saw those kids that had trauma, toxic stress, and knew that those kids were being left behind. And they were being left behind because basically we didn't know what to do. And so my desire at that point was I'm going to do everything that I can learn how to heal my own trauma, as well as how do we help these kids get better. Unfortunately, and over the past few years, we've seen this explosion in neuroscience and so many good things coming out of that to really help us understand that these children are really suffering. And the Adverse Childhood Experiences study really shows us that, for those of you who are familiar with this study, that basically the more trauma that you have, the greater risk that you have for mental health problems, behavioral problems, and physiological problems, physical problems, and even to the point of an earlier death than the average child or adult would have. And so my heart was just for these kids. And that's who I wanted to work with. And that's, I wanted to just do the work of helping people understand that even based on my own behavior and my own, most of the things that I did as a young adult and even, and in school, when I was in elementary school, I did out of just my nervous system being so dysregulated that I would show behavior or I would shut down, those sorts of things.
Right.
My teachers didn't really understand what was going on. So we were using the same methods that we've been using for 50 years, right? I was that kid that was getting punished when in fact there were some times that I was so dysregulated from my home life that I couldn't even function in school. And so that's kind of been my journey. And then as I became a school administrator and a principal, in a principal position, I saw that many of our kids were doing really, really well. And then there was this group of kids where at that time, I think to me, it was about 20% of our kids that were they were just quietly failing. In other words, we didn't know what to do with them. Even I didn't know what to do with them. And so we just kind of like, okay, we're going to move them sort of into the back area of the school. And we're going to, do our best and just get them graduated if we can. And so that's kind of where I'm at. So my heart has really been, and that's why we're doing this work. That shares my heart, and I know you do as well, Guy, is just to if we don't rescue these children, they don't have the ability to rescue themselves. Right. And if we don't rescue them, they will drown. That's right.
And you look at what we know today, and you brought it up a minute ago, kind of the explosion of neuroscience, the understanding of trauma. It gets back to, and people are probably tired of hearing me repeat the Maya Angelou quote, right? But do the best you can until you know better. When you know better, do better. We know better today. We can do better today. And it's not about even judging yourself on things you might have done in the past when you didn't know better. But today we've got a lot of information that can help us do better, support better. And I think that's really critical. I appreciate, and I've always appreciated, Rick, kind of knowing a bit about your story. I found that, you're not alone here, right? It seems like a lot of people that I've met in this space, consider themselves that child. I mean, I remember going to private schools where they practice corporal punishment. And unfortunately, I was subjected to corporal punishment. It never should happen. But I mean, these kind of things, are still happening today. And absolutely, we should be doing better. I want to pause for a second just to make a couple more hellos here. We had a few more people that joined in. Let's see, Angie from the East Coast here, and I've got Michelle here from Nebraska, from Arizona, not Iceland this time, and Nicole here in New Jersey. Exactly, our systems are outdated, not serving children in the best way. When we know better, we should do better. So let's transition over to the book. So you've been presenting for some time on this topic. And, one of the things I know about that from my own experience is that while we're on this journey, not only presenting, but continuing to learn and continuing to get new information and, continuing to evolve. So you've started down this road some time ago, realizing that these plans were not working. You started on this book some time ago in thinking about, how do we provide that help and framework to get people moving into a trauma-informed, neuro-affirming direction to create behavior plans. They're going to result in better supporting the kids that need help. So this has been a work in progress for some time. And I've had, again, an opportunity to get kind of an advanced copy of the book. And, I was an honor to have a chance to read and, kind of see what you've been working on. But there's a lot here. You cover a lot of ground. So I wonder, since we're here really to talk about this book and give people an idea of why they might want to get that in their pre-order basket when they can, Doris, can you tell me a little bit more about like what's in this book from beginning to end? And I know one of the things that you did, and I appreciate this, and it can be a challenge, but you've provided a lot of the foundation to people. So you could have just focused on the FBA and kind of the strategies, but you've got to get there, and you don't get there without the neuroscience, without the understanding of trauma. So can you give us a high level of kind of the breadth of some of the content that's in the book? And we'll drill down a little bit deeper, but kind of, give us a high level tour of some of the chapters in the book.
Okay. Well, let's just say the table of contents is 4 pages. Okay, so that gives you just a starting point.
I was a little overwhelmed the first time I saw the table of contents.
It took on a life of its own. But honestly, I mean, we both believe it evolved exactly how it was supposed to. And the book has 15 chapters. The first 11 chapters are the why. Okay. With chapter 11 being really about the importance of the adults in the environment. So up to that, it's about the kids mostly. Chapter 11 is really dedicated to the adults and the really substantive issue of helping adults gain true skills for remaining regulated and being that source of regulation for kids. But the book itself starts out, and in section 1, we first dive into a lot of just kind of looking at the paradigms of our behavior, thinking about behavior up to this point, how we've seen behavior as a target, we've seen it to be eliminated, we've seen it as a measuring stick to assess who and what kids are. We've had all these different ways that kind of it's been approached. And what we have done in that portion is, really tried to take a perspective with that we aren't going to say never use a reward. We aren't going to say never, have a negative consequence for a child. But what we are going to say is let's be realistic about what we're getting and what we're causing. So what are we getting out of that? Are we really accomplishing what we think we're accomplishing? And also, what are we causing in that child at the same time? And then from there, we move into talking about, the pieces related to how has trauma affected the nervous system of this child? How has it affected the brain of the child? What are some of the different ways that this shows up? What are the different ways in which you have to work with that nervous system? In other words, you come against what the nervous system is trying to do in the name of self-preservation. I can just promise you lose, right? So how do we work with that instead of working against it, which is what we've done in the past? For example, a child is showing a behavior. Our whole focus was to get them to do what? Stop, right? Stop it. Well, what if that's activation of trauma? They don't need to stop it. They need to discharge it. Right. So that's just one example of where we took an approach of like, get them to stop that behavior, when really, no, let's find a safe way that they can discharge the activation that they're feeling in their nervous system so they can feel calm and meet our expectation. Because it's really not about the behavior. The behavior is just the smoke. The fire is actually what's happening in the body. And so we go into the effects on the body, the effects on the brain, and then How do you need to work with those things? And then some of the other things have to do with like a concept, private logic, that dives into how does a student view themselves, how do they view others, the world around them, and how does that influence? They're living out of that. We all are. We all have private logic. We look at factors like one of the pieces of staff input that is one of the tools that we developed is looking at the child's day from start to finish and looking at where are the places in their day that unintentionally may be causing us a lack of safety or unintended sense of threat for them. And, you know, we see them blow up in science class and we think it has something to do with science class. And really, it was 2 hours before they were required to go and use a restroom where there was no adult supervision.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused them to feel incredibly unsafe. And we're seeing it show up in science, right? So taking this much more comprehensive look at what's going on beneath the surface, what are the root causes, and so forth. And then at the end of chapter, and we go through the 6 core principles of trauma-informed practice, and the idea that if we're going to call this a trauma-informed FBA and behavior plan, it needs to line up. And how do we measure that? And we even have a measurement rubric, a tool for doing that. And then chapter 11 is kind of our transition chapter. Chapter 11 is part of section 2 of the book. And that's about the adults and how do we really make it a priority for the adults to get what they need to be able to be the source of co-regulation. And then from there, it moves into chapter 12 is the FBA. Chapter 13 is behavior plan. Chapter 14 is logistics. How do we make this as easy and efficient as possible for people? And chapter 15 is like the concluding chapter. Within those chapters, we're still teaching.
Mm-hmm.
we can't not. So there's different elements, and for every part of this, I know we've shared with you before, but we have a template for everything, really.
Mm-hmm.
We have made this out of the box ready to go for people because we know that on top of the already demanding jobs they're doing, they don't have time to learn all this and now make a new system. So we have a template for every single.
I'm going to bring up the document you shared with me earlier that has a lot of the resources, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And that's what you're getting at with these templates, right? Is the idea that you're providing resources to. I mean, it's not just a matter of theory. I mean, especially, if you're an educator, there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of knowledge, but at some point it's how do I apply this? So part of your intent with this book was to give them tools that would actually enable them to put this in place. So I'll let you say a little more about this if you want to.
Well, and so this is the actually like start to finish every single chapter. Where do different tools or templates or other resources show up? But if you can scroll down for me to where you on the left-hand side, you start to hit like chapter 12 and 13. That's perfect. Oh yeah, we're still in 12. That's good. That's perfect. The FBA. So as we look at chapter 12 and 13, you can see here that there is, for example, a life events checklist. Those are actually something that are sold by STAR, which is the National Institute for Trauma and Loss in Children. That's a replacement for this idea that people would use the ACE survey, the ACE check, survey, because the ACE organization really does not recommend that. It was not designed for individual use. So these are just different tools like the Circle of Courage inventory, resilience survey. We want to look at what are the adversities the child has gone through, the toxic stress, and what are the resources present that we can tap into. Which typically is absent from a traditional FBA. Then we go into, just stop right there. So the BCG template of the CPS APT Likert. So that is where we assess the neurocognitive skills. We've made a template of the table. So it's literally copy paste and teachers can just put the results in. We've actually also put it in a Google form. So it can be done completely electronically. When you go down below that, you see there's a staff FBA input collection template. That's a Google template that it collects. What are the previous interventions that have been tried? What are previous modifications that have been tried? What are sensory needs that are being observed? What are regulation needs that are being observed? Those sort of things. There's a similar form for caregivers. We want to make sure that the caregiver has the opportunity to give that same input. Then below that are two of my favorite tools. Rick's holding his breath, hoping I won't talk for like 30 minutes about this. But when's the last time you saw an FBA with student input in it? Like for me, that was never.
Right.
We never visited a school district that had that present. We also know that it's very difficult to solicit from a lot of the students we're talking about what would help them in their difficult moments. They don't have the interoceptive awareness to understand what's going on in their body, to recognize it, and they don't have the language. So these tools are designed to scaffold and help walk them through, and it gives them opportunities. They can write, they can dictate, they can draw, and it also gives them a lot of recognition opportunities. So they're able to recognize when you say, my body feels like it can't move. They might not come up with that language on their own, but we can say, you know, this, and I've experienced this with kids. They're like, oh yeah, that's me. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And of course, you've been trainers for collaborative problem solving, I know, for some time, and I mean this is really kind of about that. It's about collaborating, right? You know, how do you work with the child rather than doing something to the child? Like, how do we work with kids to solve the challenges and the problems that are facing them? So I mean, I'm such a big believer in that need to move from doing things to or doing things for to how do we collaborate with? I mean, that's such an important voice. I mean, and I love that my voice matters. I mean, that alone is saying something really important. So, you know, throughout the book, you're providing not only the essential knowledge that kind of helps you to understand all of this through a different lens, because in my mind, when you understand human behavior through that lens of the brain and the nervous system, you see behavior differently. You have an opportunity to respond to behavior differently. You can lead with curiosity over kind of demands for compliance, and you can actually solve problems rather than just trying to control them. So, I mean, then you go into this, you know, okay, well, here's the FBA process and what you can do, but then you provide these tools, and this provides a wealth of tools that could help to supplement something that somebody might be doing. Doesn't mean they have to use all of these, but what they might find useful for their.
It's the Chipotle of FBAs and behavior plans, right?
You're making me hungry. I just realized I forgot lunch. So
I know. But I mean, we do tell people at the outset of the training, we're like, okay, before you become overwhelmed, we'll just tell you, you don't need to use every single thing you see with every single kid.
Right.
But it's here, and this is what we should be doing, right? Tailoring, designing based on what's needed for that particular kid. And I'll just say one more thing about the student input tools. I think it's important is that even with things like, I mean, obviously we're big proponents of collaborative problem solving. There are kids that are really good at having those conversations and kids that really struggle with them because they don't have the ideas, they don't have the language, they don't have the awareness.
And they're not used to people listening to them or caring what they have to say.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And so this is it's designed to bridge that gap. And it's also designed to give them a lot of power and choice and control, because on both of those tools, it's their option how many items they do, how they do them, you know, and so it lets them, out of the 13 or 16 items on My Voice Matters, they might do 3 or they might do 10. But it gives them more sense of control about how they're sharing.
I'm going to go ahead and take the screen down here for a second. And I want to take a moment just to, we've had some things happening here in the chat, and I just want to address a couple of these here. A couple of questions. Angela said, I'm not in education, but a mom of a child on an IEP. My question is, how do we get adults that are still stuck in the belief that children are manipulating us? I fired my child's OT when she told me my 2-year was manipulating me, when the reality was his receptive language was highly delayed. How do we get adults not just to think the worst of kids? And this is a big issue. I mean, you know, even when you're looking through that traditional approach of assuming that all behavior is intentional, you're making a judgment that this child is intending to do this. it makes a huge difference. So what are your thoughts on, and I know part of your book really kind of covers this, it's
Oh,
shifting
yeah.
the mindset, but
Yeah.
Rick, why don't you give me your thoughts? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on how we help people to kind of shift away from this thought of, this child is manipulating me to, kind of seeing it differently?
Well, I think the key is to really help educators understand how the nervous system functions, what trauma does to the nervous system, or even just, it doesn't have to be trauma. It could be toxic stress. It could be neurodiversity. It could be, but the point here is that we've been focused on the wrong thing, the behavior.
Right.
We call the behavior just the smoke. It's just a byproduct of what's happening in the nervous system. And so I think that is the biggest thing, is to help teachers, educators to understand the actual nervous system, and that many of the responses of a 2-year-old, for example, is going to typically be just based, their responses are adaptive responses.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if they're afraid, they're going to show behavior.
Or they're feeling like they're not understood.
They're going
Right.
to show behavior.
Yeah.
And so it's an adaptive response. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's the same for all of us. If I believe that there's a wolf outside my door right now, and it's going to attack me as soon as I leave, even though there's nothing out there, if I believe that, my nervous system is going to act accordingly. And yeah, I'm not going out there. I might lock the door, right? And that's an adaptive response. And I think that's one of the keys.
Mm-hmm.
And that the other thing I always want to say about kids and adults, does anybody wake up in the morning and say, I just want to be lousy at what I do? Do any of our children go to school and go, I don't care?
Right.
No, we're not.
We all want to do well, right?
We
I mean,
all
yeah.
want to do well. Even a 2-year-old
Right.
wants to do well.
Sure.
I mean, their definition of well, but we have to look at them and go, okay, where are they at developmentally?
Mm-hmm,
What is happening in their nervous system?
Yeah.
How-
And we often have developmentally inappropriate expectations of children.
Absolutely.
And when you begin to layer on, neurodivergence and disability, the problem is very often not the kid, it's the expectation that we have. And sometimes we actually have to change or step back from an expectation that may not be appropriate. But very often, we tend to go into the judgmental end of this, right? Margaret Thorsborn was on recently, who's done a lot of work around restorative approaches. Said something that resonated with me. It was like, be curious, not furious, right?
Yeah.
The adult nervous system, how we respond, all of these things are so important. And this work really does begin with the adult. And so many times, this is not a matter of there's a deficit or something wrong with this child. This is a child who is internally feeling stress or having a difficult time in a moment. And we all have that. But I think, as you bring up, I mean, when you begin to understand brain development, when you begin to have expectations that are more aligned with reality and understand that, hey, when infants are born, most of their behavior is stress-driven behavior. They're not having cortex behavior. They're not having thought, but we can't expect that a 2-year-old has moved too far past that. A lot of their behavior, the majority at 2 years old, I would say, is still that bottom up or body up behavior. So, to Angela's question, I think when you can get people to reframe behavior and see it different, when you can get them to understand it through that lens, and you guys do a fantastic job in the book of really kind of getting into that science and helping people understand it. And when you can do that and then first apply it to you and then apply it to kids, like everything changes, right?
Absolutely. I think that what is so important for people, once they understand the neuroscience and the things that you just got saying, Guy, once they begin to understand this, they understand that there's a better way than what we're doing right now. I mean, I like to tell teachers, other educators, you have more power than you believe you have. And you have the power to change this child's life, to really affect the trajectory of their life. But the only way you're not going to do that through punishment and rewards, which you're just typically just going to get compliance at very best, but you're not changing.
And compliance at a cost. Compliance at a cost of masking, of shame, of other things that might be occurring because of that focus.
And lack of attachment, right?
Right.
And a child, I'm thinking this little 2-year-old still, and what does this child need? It needs connection.
Yep.
It needs a felt sense of safety,
Yep.
Predictability. Those are things that all children need, but those are things that all of us adults need as well, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, the beauty of this work, the beauty of what you've done in this book and what you're offering to educators is that by going down this approach, you're going to get to understanding the deeper why beneath that behavior. You're going to come up with a plan that has a far greater likelihood of success. And ultimately, you're improving the outcome, not just for the child, but
Yeah.
also for the teachers, the
Yeah.
staff, the administrators, the families. Like, you know, this work, I mean, like you said, Rick, you sometimes have more power than you realize. And that power is actually to probably improve your own circumstances as well. If you're that teacher who's frustrated, like we've had 12 behavior plans and none of them work. Well, guess what? There's something new you can do. I want to hit a couple more comments here real quick. Just as we were having this conversation, Michelle just said, Angela, firing them was a good start. Yeah. And I mean, I do think that if you find people that are not aligned with your thoughts and your beliefs and your ideas, it probably is important to find people that are, and we got to hear from Pam here. Michelle said that I find that many teacher staff feel disrespected if my son doesn't immediately comply. And of course, you know, you both probably know one of my least favorite words on the planet is compliance, because we focus so much on compliance that we don't understand, you know, why somebody's having a hard time. So any thoughts on that comment there about, you know?
Well, here's my thought. You know, it's like, I'm going to give an example real quick. So we tell this story of how I worked with a little girl that was like a second or third grade girl. And every morning that I would walk up to her, I would say, good morning, how are you? And she would come back with something that was very unpleasant, like, I'll kill you. And guess what? So I feel disrespected?
And it was in the hallway. She wasn't in class, right? She's roaming the hall.
She's roaming the hall. And I did this over and over. Every time that I saw her, I always greeted her and smiled, and I always got a very negative response back. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this story is this. What she was in a state of protection due to the significant trauma that she'd experienced. Was she being disrespectful to me? No. When trauma disrupts the ability to connect with others.
Right.
So she was having difficulty connecting with me because she associated me with the trauma that she had in her life. And so when we say disrespected is kind of one of those words for me too. I'm like, wait a minute, let's really break this down. Is this just the child not being in a state of protection because of their trauma?
Right.
Or is it really disrespect? It's not. It's and if we can continue, and I continued with this little girl for months and months and months, and gradually, guess what happened? When I continued to greet her, smile at her, say good morning to her, and so on. After about 6 months of this, guess what happened? It all changed. It shifted her nervous system to where now she began to say good morning to me, wanted to give me a high five.
Wait, but you have to tell me what the.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you the other part of the story. He was.
But I love the shift there, shifting from, you know, Robin Goebel talks a lot about kind of our brain being in connection or protection, right? And that was a shift there. You know, you were going from a brain that was in a protective state, and you know, again, you know, the kids sometimes that need help and support the most are the ones that might have the hardest time because of the way that trauma can affect the ability to make those connections. But then you shifted into that connection mode, and you know, I mean, kind of going through like a Bruce Perry model of this, you know, kind of regulate, relate, reason. That connection then leads the way for kids to learn to be receptive, to be using their cortex. So I mean, there's so much power there. Sorry, Doris, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's just really.
I think it's important for people to hear the way in which it happened. So he saw no sign of this change, right? He'd say good morning. She'd say, I'm going to cut your throat. She would growl at him, right? Like, and it didn't change. He saw no sign. He was in her classroom, and he used to do group work in her classroom with the kids, social emotional group work. And she's at the back of the class. She doesn't participate. She roams in the back. And finally, after about 6 months, he is leaving the classroom after the end of working with the group. And she's at her desk like this and holds up a note in her hand like this. And I have a picture of the note. I show it in most of our trainings on a slide, and I'm not joking. We need Kleenex at every table. It's like, "Dear Mr. Bowman, you are so handsome. You are so kind. You have nice handwriting. You are a great person."
Wow. Wow.
And from that day forward, she sought him out for a high five, for a hello,
Yeah.
and then gradually began engaging in her schoolwork.
Right.
But I think it's important for people to know that, like, that tipping point, like, you may think you've gone nowhere and you're actually 80% of the way there.
Mm-hmm,
And you
mm-hmm.
don't know it. There's no
Mm.
sign on the surface, but the nervous system is starting to, like, come into
Right.
or
Right.
What
right.
I want to hear people, I want people to hear is this is predictable relational stress.
Right.
And predictable relational stress repatterns the stress response system.
Right.
That's
Right.
exactly what happened. It wasn't anything great that
Mhm.
I did. It's just I recognized that if I dosed her
Right.
with this stress every time I saw her, that after a while, her nervous system would say, he's safe.
Yeah.
I know what he's going to do. He's going
Right.
to walk up to me and
she had
ask the
experienced the
question.
murder of 2 of her younger siblings, her
Oh
younger
my
brothers,
gosh.
by
Wow.
her
Wow.
father,
Mm.
one, and then he went to jail, and then a man that the mom brought into the house the next year killed the other
Oh
brother.
my gosh. Wow.
So when
Wow.
she encountered a male in the hallway, this elementary school was almost exclusively female staff.
Mm-hmm.
When she encountered a male in the hallway, he was a threat.
Right. 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 Well, I mean, and it speaks so much. I mean, again, back to where the question started with us, the response from the adult means so much. And of course, if you had gotten, and it's easy to do, it's easy to become dysregulated when somebody comes up to you and
can
says,
say
"Hey,
that
F you,
to me.
I want to stab you." But, being an adult with a fully developed prefrontal cortex, being an adult who understands some of these things gives you the power to kind of maintain and work through some of that. And I mean, I get the impression, and Doris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Rick's just strikes me as somebody to be a really good co-regulator, and that ability to keep yourself, now, maybe not for you,
You
but
want to tell him? Here's what I tell him.
You can tell him.
No, I mean, he would not have been that person years ago.
Yeah.
When you do this work, you're working on your own nervous
that's right.
system too.
That's right. Yep.
He was not the person who would stay regulated when a kid did something or said something disrespectful. But when he became intentional about it and practiced it, we know it's just like what we talk about doing with kids. Every time you practice, oh, that's just their nervous system talking to me.
Right.
And you don't let your nervous system go all jacked up. Though, okay, you just ran another run of that pathway, right? You ran the ski slope again, again. And he's had other people then come up to him now and go, "Are you a kid whisperer or something?" And he laughs because he knows and I can say the same. I would have been the last teacher I would have assigned to that behavior program on my second job. Not because I was mean to kids. I wasn't mean to kids. I was just so conventional in how I approach behavior.
Right. But again, do the best you can until you know better, do
And
better.
then
This is a journey, and this is not
Yeah.
about judging people for where they may be or what they might be doing. It's, when you, I mean, to me, the neuroscience piece of this, it's transformative. Once you kind of see things differently, you can't unsee them now. And once you see that differently, you have such an opportunity to do things differently. And it really then becomes who you are. I mean, I learned very early on with my son that how important my response was when he was having a difficult time. And when I learned to take a step back, use a calming Rick voice, I made progress. And we would, rather than escalating or co-escalating, we would begin to, co-regulate and things would move in a better direction. But it is hard and it takes time. And you have to give yourself grace during the journey. But again, with this book, you've provided the why, the how, the tools, and I mean, it's just add water, right? Just add educator who is willing to go on willing to go on a journey and curious and interested, and you can really transform what you're doing and change results. Want to hit a couple more comments here. We've got a couple things happening in the chat. Angela just said, "Thank you for taking time to answer my question. I have a couple teachers I plan to buy the book for." Love to hear that. And it's interesting because you know, when you think about the title of this book, you're going to think, well, you know, FBA. Okay, so who's it for? Well, it's for educators. Well, you know, I would say, you know, it's not only for educators; it's for families, for caregivers, whoever you may be.
We have a
And
lot of advocates and a lot of families that have been to our trainings and are waiting for this book.
yeah, yeah. And the great thing about a book like this, and Angela hit it here, is, you know, I can tell you, I mean, there have been books I've given away to IEP teams or to teachers or whoever it may be. And you may not be the person responsible for doing a behavior plan in your school, but you know, you get a book like this and you can begin to offer some input of like, hey,
Yeah.
here's a different way, or then share that with the person who might be doing the plans. So I want to encourage people. I mean, think about that. Think about how you can offer that to others. I you know, I don't know that we've talked about this yet, but I've been thinking about our 2026 book study schedule, and we've been doing an educator series for that.
Mhm.
And I sent to one of our lead for the book studies the other day an email saying, hey, this might be a really good one for our educator book study series.
Yeah.
You know, there's such a great potential here. A couple other comments. She liked the Be Curious, Not Furious. So Michelle said, we've come a long way from behavior extinction. Thank goodness. Yeah. But, you know, many have not. Many are still kind of in that vein here. And you did still maybe solicit some tears here with your story. And it was a beautiful story.
You know, Guy, I'm going to tell you, we've been hearing back from people who have been doing reviews of the book saying just flat out, this is going to be our first full staff PD of the year, is going to be a book study, because all of those chapters have reflect and apply questions at the end.
Mhm.
And so, and the other thing that we've had from 3 or 4 different professors who have done reviews is this is going to become our text for our special ed program.
That's fantastic.
So that is like, yeah, we're pretty
Yeah.
excited because, right, if we can get those teachers coming through those programs, learning this instead of the
Yep.
old way,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
the tide is shifting.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a comment here from Donna.
Hi, Donna.
Apparently in the fan club here. You are so wise and knowledgeable, and most of all, truly care. Yeah, love that. And having had the opportunity to collaborate with you, you know, I know that as well. And then we have Marianne here. Hi, guys. I've taken several of your classes in Oregon. Your knowledge is unmatched, and I want this book for our school, which is really exciting. I mean, it's exciting to think about the application of this. Kind of curious, have you? And I may have asked you this before, not talking in the middle of a live, but have you presented at COPA before?
We just submitted a proposal.
Good. Yeah, I don't know if I brought that up to you, but you know, I remember going. You know,
Yeah.
attorneys are often advocating
Yes.
for FBAs, and one of the things that I always, in fact, I was at COPA a couple years ago, and you know, the idea of trauma-informed FBA was kind of out on the floor, but the FBAs that they were busy advocating for are often not trauma-informed FBAs. So yeah, I hope your proposal is accepted. It would be fantastic.
We have a colleague, a really good friend colleague, who is an advocate in Orange County, California. And she was there last year in the session texting me, like, you guys need to be here. This is what, you know, the people that are here need to be armed with what you're bringing. So
yeah, absolutely. And we have another friend from the collaborative problem solving world here that you may know. Rick and Doris, so good to hear, /see you, bravo. You've got a book. And Pam was just weighing in, you know, that it sounds like things that your book should be text with Beyond Behaviors for all students. Yeah, agreed. Mona's work is fantastic as well.
We cite that in the book.
Yeah. No, Mona. In fact, last I talked to her, there's a new version or a new edition of Beyond Behaviors coming, and I don't know when, but hopefully sometime soon. So the book will be available next week for pre-order. And
paperback will be
paperback. Okay.
for pre-order right now.
Okay. And I need to get my signed copy at some point. I mean, I have a digital copy, and that's nice.
It's coming.
That's right. But you know, really excited to you know, kind of be where you are with this and to see this coming out. I do think that there's so much potential here. And again, I mean, you know, the idea that, you know, you're providing not only a really solid foundation here for people, and no matter where they might be. One of the things I remember in kind of reviewing the book was, hey, if you already know this stuff, skip ahead and you can go to this section here and you can dive right into this. So I think it's a book that can really serve well a pretty large cross section, whether you're just kind of learning some of the neuroscience of behavior and about the impact of trauma, or whether you've been doing this for a long time. There's something to kind of help a wide, kind of a wide range of audiences here. So tell me a little bit more about kind of your hopes for the book. I mean, now that it's, and again, and you and I have had some conversations going back to the beginning of this year, and I know that it is a process to kind of get to the point that you're at. But now that it's getting ready to get on pre-order, and won't be long before people will be able to have their own copy. Any hopes for the book as it's getting ready to go out?
First, and I'll share mine. Well, I will just tell you that's evolved in recent weeks. I have to say, I mean, our hopes were to have a big impact, clearly. I mean, if you think about this, so, I approached some of the top people in this field for endorsements. We have some of those. And my approach was really my thinking about the hope of what this is going to accomplish. And that is, this is the one single funnel into which all of the kids who are suffering most in schools are funneled. The FBA behavior plan system, right? It's required by law in every state.
Right.
So if we can impact this on a broad scale, we impact an entire generation of kids and all the ones that follow.
Absolutely.
And that has become, after now receiving some of the endorsements that we've seen show up in our email in the last month or so, the vision is that big. It is that we are going to shift this entire FBA BSP system, because that is where all the kids at the top of that triangle that are hurting and suffering the most, they end up in that system, generally having things inflicted on them that are worsening their trauma, that are they're causing them to re-experience the sense of being a victim of trauma. So we want to see it serve families. We want to see it make this easier for educators, right? We always tell educators when we're training them, we're like, we're here for the kids and we're here for you. Because if we can help you to know to do what's more effective, it's going to be easier on you as well.
Yeah.
And all of the things, honestly, that they're learning in the book can be applied personally.
Yeah.
Every single bit of it can be applied.
Yeah. One of my hopes, is that adults that read this book will use these same strategies on themselves. Everything that's in the book, I have literally used on my own trauma and have seen wonderful, unbelievable results. So I'm hoping that adults will take a look at this because there's so many adults that we have out there that are serving children. Right. They have their own trauma that they're dealing with as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you that this is for you as well.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that it will help you in your road to recovery from the as well.
So important. And I mean, you have your own lived experience in that vein and see the value of it. And I know many others do as well. But it really does. I mean, if we're able to apply these things to ourselves, our ability to then help and support others just increases astronomically. I'm going to share with you, not that you asked, but I'm going to share with you my hope for the book. And one of my hopes for the book, this book is a book that talks about, FBA's functional behavioral assessments and behavior plans. But I happen to believe that the information in this book, and we share, I think, some common, I guess, a lot of the work that influences your work, and a lot of the work that influences our beliefs here is grounded in just a collection of work from a lot of different people that are in this space, and a lot of people that have done some amazing work. But I actually have a belief that the approach that you've outlined here and the ideas in this book can actually lead to a situation where maybe fewer kids need an FBA, right? Because when you begin to apply these ideas, we get to a point where we're ultimately going upstream to offer a better level of support and understanding that prevents us from getting to the point where we need a functional behavioral assessment. So my hope for your follow-up book will be in 10 years, guess what? FBAs are no longer a thing, right? I mean, you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I say
No,
that, kind of
absolutely.
being sarcastic, but I mean, the hope is that, with any of this work that, you're really making a difference upstream that,
Mhm.
I wish the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint wasn't even necessary. Like,
Yes, yeah,
we would be a success if we were no longer needed. That there was not, kids weren't being restrained and secluded. That's what we've got to work towards. We've got to work towards kind of making these upstream changes that are really going to support better outcomes for kids, better outcomes for educators, better outcomes for families, better outcomes for our communities. And I
Mhm.
think it's possible. And the kind of work that you've grounded in this is so critical, in my opinion, for getting us there.
Well, Guy, what you're describing, we saw happen in a micro version in the last school district we were in, because we were the only two that were carrying this torch in our district. And we started going one team at a time, right, around a kid and bringing in these pieces. I mean, this is where this was shaped, right? It became our lab. And one at a time, one team at a time, one kid at a time, we started doing this for a year and a half. It was just us doing this. At the end of that year and a half, we had been begging to do a training for our district. They finally said, yeah, you can do it. You can't do it during contract. We won't pay anybody to attend. The teachers had to pay us 20
Here's the
bucks.
obstacle course. Go
Yeah,
navigate.
yeah. Here, they had to pay us $20 because we were providing the books and the snacks and the coffee. It was a 3-day training that happened the day they got off contract, and 20% of our district signed up voluntarily.
Hmm.
Okay, that is like a microcosm of exactly what you're describing, because here's the thing. Those teachers started to take what they learned around solving problems for one kid, started to become part of their practice.
Yeah.
And then their practice started to be applied to more kids. They wanted to learn more. They wanted better skills for doing this with all kids.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you're right. I love that you articulated that,
that.
because that really is it. That's where we need to be headed. We actually are, I'll let the cat out of the bag, but we're contemplating kind of repurposing chapters 1 through 11 into a like every educator guide to applying everything we teach here. Because like I've always been a proponent of don't wait till a kid's on an IEP to do a BSP and do an FBA and a behavior plan. They don't need to be referred for an IEP. If we do this early, but really we don't even need to get to the FBA, like you said, in behavior plan, if we can just help folks to learn, not just you need to be trauma informed, these are the principles, this is what it looks like, but really how to apply it and what are the outcomes that they can expect, and give them the tools to do it. They don't have time to create the tools.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one last question. We're going to kind of wrap things up here shortly, but kind of back to that idea, when you ask that question of, who's known a kid that's been misunderstood, who's known a kid with an FBA, whose FBA worked, the number of hands that go up, but based on your experience in doing this, and you don't have to give me, a really deep, a lot of details, but I'm kind of curious, like, can you think of success stories where you've had people that you've provided training to in the past on this topic who have said, hey, look, nothing worked, and we did this, and here's what we did. And so can you tell me anything about maybe some examples of success stories that you've heard as you've been doing this work and working with individual educators and teachers? I'd love to hear a story or two.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to let Rick do that. He's got some great stories. I'm going to answer Mary Ann's question really quick, though, because I don't want that to go unasked. There is ebook right now, Mary Ann, for on Kindle. On Amazon is for pre-order right now. I'm guessing we'll come up with another avenue of ebook too for people who can't get Kindle. But for right now, it's on pre-order as a Kindle ebook.
Fantastic. So you guys really are a team, because she just bought you a little bit of time so you could think of a really good story there. I can just see that teamwork working.
Oh, yeah.
So Rick, give me a good success story.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a success story that was pretty amazing. There was a first grader that I was working with at an elementary school in Oregon, and showing all sorts of behavior, disrupting class, profanity. I mean, out of control type of behavior, people would say. And the two teachers just would not. So we had an FBA done for this child, a trauma-informed FBA. They knew there was trauma, and yet for really the reason, there were two teachers that shared this first grade classroom, and they just refused to use trauma-informed care. And part of it, I found out, and I don't want anybody to hear this as this was negative toward them. I ended up finding out that they were afraid to do it. They just feared that
they would
fail somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short is I was able to get a transfer with this child and his FBA to another school. And so I had him at this other school I went over the FBA with the teacher and a couple of educational assistants at this school. And they said, yep, we'll put it in practice, I came back 2 weeks later. I was walking into the classroom, and someone stopped me. And they said, Mr. Bowman, we prefer that you not go down to the classroom and see the student down there that I'm referring to. And I said, why? And they go, because he is doing so fantastic, and we don't want him to associate you with the old school. And I said, that is awesome.
Wow.
He started flourishing in that school. Within months, within weeks, the trauma-informed things that were being done, interventions in that FBA was being done with fidelity by the teachers. And I think the big thing too was the connection that they were building with this child immediately,
and that the whole team was on board.
The whole team was on board with following through. They were doing proactive regulation. They were doing all sorts of things to help work on his nervous system. And the last that I heard of him, this was like I didn't have to go back to the school. I just check on him every now and then to see by phone how he was doing, and he was flourishing in that school.
Love it. Love it. I mean, this work can make a difference, and it makes a difference for a child. It makes a difference for an educator. There's so much, so much good that can happen here. A couple of just final comments here as we wrap up. Thank you for writing this book. I will definitely recommend it. And we, of course, got that question about the ebooks. So as we wrap up here, I just want to give you an opportunity, aside from, obviously, we've been talking about the book the entire show here, and that is available right now on Amazon for pre-order in the Kindle version. The print version, paperback, will be available for pre-order sometime next week. And encourage people to check that out. But where else can people, I know we talked earlier, and I'm actually going to bring this up. You have some training coming up. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Or in general, where else people can learn about your work and follow you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the best place to kind of keep tabs on our trainings is the events page on our website. So they'll be consistently posted there. Right now, just as an example, so often we offer districts who ask us to come train a discount if they will allow us to open virtual seats, so that people in other districts who might never have that opportunity can sign up virtually. So we bring Zoom in and we do hybrid. So we have 2 trainings coming up that are for kind of general ed, all teachers. It's our truly trauma-informed training. And then this is our next offering of the FBA is a Fantasy, which this started as a training before it was a book 9 years ago. And that is on October 30th. And so you can find the link and registration information and everything. Those will always be on our website. I would also really encourage people to connect with us. I know that Courtney's been sharing some of our social media information. Our Facebook page, we've had 2. We're kind of making the shift to the FBA page because it's kind of growing rapidly. The Facebook page and LinkedIn are probably the 2 places where we have the most activity and are putting really helpful resources out there. So I really would encourage people to connect in that way as well. But yeah, if you're looking for training, you're looking for resources, or like what's up with Rick and Doris, for sure, our events page of our website and then our Facebook page.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today and making some time to talk about the book. I'm excited about it coming out, and I know we've been talking about it for a while, and I'm sure I told you earlier you need to go take a vacation after this, and
do. We
go,
do.
go away for a week. But, I want to thank you, and you really appreciate you coming here to talk about it today. Rick, I want to give you a chance for any final word. Any final word of wisdom you want to leave us with today, or anything inspiring you want to leave us with as we wrap up?
Well, I want to thank you, Guy, for having us today. We're really grateful for your friendship, and so I just want to say that. And I want to just give a shout out to all of the teachers out there, all of the educators, and let you all know that you are our heroes. You're on the front lines. You're doing this hard. You're doing the hard work, and we want you to know that. I hear so many stories where teachers are and other educators are so underappreciated.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is people don't really know how hard it is and the stress there is involved in being an educator these days.
Yeah.
And we just want all of you to know that our hearts are with you. We want to support you, and we wish all of you the best. And we're here for you.
Yeah, I love it. And again, these things can ultimately improve the outcomes for all, improve the outcomes for the children, improve the outcomes for the educators, the paraprofessional, the family, so I'm really excited to have your work out there. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to ask.
I want to echo one thing that Rick said, and that's for the parents, Guy, too.
Of course.
Is that we have had so many parents asking for this, that they needed a way to have something that they can bring to a team at a school. And it's neutral. It's not, I'm telling you what to do, or you need to do this for my child, but this is what's right. Like a neutral tool. I don't know how to bridge that gap.
Right.
And so, we really, we've worked with lots and lots of families as well as schools, and really tried to bring schools and parents together as allies. And we hope that this book is going to become that function of bringing folks together and giving parents a way to voice what their child needs in a way that the school can not only receive it, but see that it's actually doable. Right? You're not asking me to do something crazy that there's just no way we can do.
Yeah.
So we hope that really affects the lives of a lot of families.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to ask the two of you to stick around for about 30 seconds more. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We will be back, I believe. Well, you know what? We actually may. I'm trying to think if we're here next week or not. But we will be back soon and with another show. And join us then. So with that, good night, goodbye, and we will see you again soon. All right. Thanks.